Ron, thank you. Just over 24 hours ago, the U.S. Supreme Court upheld a Tennessee law that bans certain care for transgender youth. The Tennessee Equality Project fought against this law, both locally and in Washington. Today, we have two members of the group joining us, Bean Chapman, the chair for Knox, Anderson, and Blount counties, and Eli Givens, the Williamson County organizer. Thank you both for joining us today. I know yesterday was very emotional. Eli, let's start with you. You testified against this legislation in Washington. What was your first reaction when you heard the Supreme Court's ruling yesterday?
Yeah, it was just very, very heavy. I first testified in 2023 on this bill when it was in the Tennessee House. And so even being in the Supreme Court in Washington, the air was very heavy. There was a lot of emotions going around. And so we are very disappointed by this ruling, of course.
All right, Bean, let's talk about how many Tennessee youth identify as transgender. How many families does this impact? And then explain how this ruling can have both a mental and financial impact on these families, please.
Thank you for the question. There are estimated around 3,000 transgender identifying children in the state of Tennessee. And not all of those youth have supportive families. So it's important to note that at the start. And the ones that do have access to affirming care or want access to affirming care, right now they can't have that. And so they're having to go out of state. And so for a mental health perspective, it's really hard for families already who've had a hard time accessing the care because it's been banned for the last few years now, or I guess year and a half. And then the financial toll is steep because these families have to travel far away. Some are traveling out of the country to find care for their kids.
Yeah, and that was a follow-up question for you, Bean. Where do the families have to go? Because we know that Mississippi and Arkansas are also conservative, politically leaning states. So where do these families go since the Tennessee ban has been upheld?
There are families that, I know going to Ohio, New York, we're going to Ohio, going to New York, California, and Oregon and Washington. So a lot of the coastal states are where I know families have gone. One of the issues that clinics and doctors have had closer, because they have such a higher patient load with kids that have gone there, they are not accepting new patients or the wait list is very long. So that's why a lot of families are having to travel a really long distance to get care. And it can take months to get in. And then the care that they do have is coordinated and takes many months and years. So it isn't something that happens overnight or that families decide to do overnight and do the next day.
And it further complicates an already difficult issue that families are dealing with. Eli, this ruling did not address the issue of whether courts should automatically review such laws with a more skeptical eye. Your thoughts on how this ruling could impact other areas, perhaps sports or the military?
I mean, as we've seen, Tennessee has been kind of a starting ground for a lot of this legislation. And so they're really showing how this legislation has supposed support, especially with the words of lawmakers, including William Lamberth, who said in a comment yesterday that this ruling helps stop crazy liberal crap. And so we're definitely seeing a lot of different attitudes going around in Tennessee, and it definitely has a huge effect on other areas in demonizing this legislation, essentially.
All right, Bean, Tennessee Attorney General Jonathan Skrmetti said the law will, quote, protect kids from irreversible decisions they cannot yet fully understand, unquote. What is your reaction to his statement?
My reaction to his statement has been consistent, which is we know how to protect trans kids, and legislating against their bodies, their bodily autonomy, removing parents' rights to help care for these children is the opposite of what we would do to protect these kids. They weaponize science in a way that they don't understand it. They have a very rudimentary understanding of science and biology, and it's really challenging for us to combat that. So I just continue to remind people that gender-affirming care does save lives, regardless of what they want people to believe, regardless of what he says in the media. We know how care is important to these children and their families.
And we're talking specifically about gender-affirming care for minors. Eli, could this ruling lead to a law for this kind of care for adults? Is that a concern?
Absolutely. We've already seen some actions taken against adults outside the healthcare realm. I mean, the suicide hotline that's exclusive for LGBTQ plus people, funding is already being cut for that. A lot of adults that are trying to receive gender affirming healthcare cannot get it covered by Medicaid. And we even saw this with the Vanderbilt University information leak. A lot of adults and youth are getting their personal information released to the public for lawmakers to scrutinize. And so we are already seeing a lot of effects from when this bill was first introduced in 2023, and it's very harmful.
All right, final 20 seconds. What now moving forward? How do you move forward, and how do you fight against any other laws that would harm the community?
I mean, in these really unprecedented times, it's more important than ever to lean on community and support the community. That can be volunteering, that could be donating to student groups, it could be donating to shelters. There are just a lot of different ways that this could be covered, but just making sure to show up and making your perspective really clear that gender affirming healthcare is essential.
All right, Bean Chapman, Eli Gibbons with the Tennessee Equality Project, doing good, hard work. We appreciate you taking the time to talk with us during what has been a very emotional week. Thank you both.
Thank you.
Thank you.